Okay, so you all just got an introduction on me. My name again is Mikayla Brown, and I'm actually starting my second year of my PhD program next week. So this is actually a dissertation idea that I've been working on, and I started working on the research and really laying out the methodology this previous semester. So I wanted to kind of start presenting on it and kind of talking through some of these ideas and framing of how I'm going to be looking at this research. So the name of this project is Virtually Exploring the Benin Bronzes Repatriation Initiative. And as was in my bio, I do like using digital methods to kind of explore the web and to kind of rely on them for extracting data and kind of looking more at what the internet's telling us about things. I was working in marketing for quite some time, so I have a very different relationship with data and kind of ethics, and that's what pretty much led me to doing my PhD after spending some time working in political advertising. So anyone has any questions about that too, I'm happy to talk more. So to get started with this presentation, I really wanted to look at how the Benin bronzes are being framed by museums and really focusing on their websites, and I'll kind of go more into why I'm choosing to focus on websites. So this project really came out of that and really looking at the relationship that museums have with their web presence and how they're presenting themselves to visitors about any given issue. And in this case, it's the Benin bronzes, which is a very contentious kind of issue that's been going on a lot in museums, and we've kind of seen it unfold, and this one's really gaining a lot of traction right now, and we've been hearing whispers about repatriating goods for quite some time now. But the Benin bronzes is actually one of the more proactive ones that museums are at least starting to speak about. So for my research, I'm really asking two main questions. That's how are museums framing the Benin bronzes on their web pages? And then secondly, looking more into that framing about how are they engaging or disengaging with discourse around colonialism, the actual idea of looting and stealing goods, and acknowledging this, or is it more being framed in a more settler ignorance a way where it's a little bit more less details, more of like a disavowal standpoint. So I'm really looking at how they're framing the web page and then doing more of a textual analysis to kind of parse out themes and patterns that I will detect as I look at the web pages. So for background on the Benin bronzes, I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with what they are, but they're one of the most looted artifacts that happened during the scramble for Africa in about 1897, which is over 123 years ago. So lots of ancient artifacts and relics were stolen from the continent, largely like the Ivory Coast area. And these artifacts, including the Benin bronzes, have been scattered worldwide. There's over 3,000 estimated that are just located across the globe. There's probably many more. And roughly over 160 museums and other institutions are really hold these items in their collections. Some, in my research, I've uncovered that some of the Benin bronzes were apparently gifted to institutions. So that kind of, again, makes us think more about like what is looted, how is it considered a gift or stolen, and thinking more about like the ownership of these items and whether museums or other institutions have the same duty to return them, even if they were gifted to them, and under what guise was that gift given. And yeah, museums, as we all know in this room, are really starting to grapple with their past and start trying to have these conversations more proactively and figure out what they can do with looted or stolen goods. And the Benin bronzes, as I said, have really gained traction. There's been a lot written about them recently. I feel like almost every other week I hear something new about a museum either acknowledging it or trying to participate in this repatriation. And again, this happened around the 16th century. Benin City is now located in present-day Nigeria. And all of the Benin bronzes are very elaborately decorated sculptures of brass and bronze. Some of them are human, some of them are animal figurines or just other royal ornaments. And they are considered to be some of Africa's greatest treasures. And to define repatriation, just for those who maybe aren't as familiar, this is the return of stolen or looted cultural materials to their countries of origin. So it really is just the act of just giving something back that was stolen. So why museums? I also have had a really strong relationship with museums growing up, and I keep coming back to my interest in museums. I initially, as I said, started my PhD wanting to look more at surveillance and ethics, which I actually am also doing that work as well. So I have two main research projects going on. But museums really have this responsibility to showcase world and distant cultures to people. They have a huge responsibility of highlighting what is art, what is history, what is culture, and relaying that in the most accurate and respectful way as they possibly can. And they do really serve as archival institutions and kind of houses of the world's history for people to engage with and kind of have further dialogues or interactions. And often the attention and the visitors that museums are getting, maybe this might be the only time that these visitors are going to interact with this whatever culture or history or art. So they are important spaces to have these very complex and sometimes difficult conversations. So the importance of museums, obviously we all know it can't be like underscored. And why websites? So obviously websites are not the most technologically advanced software or digital technology that any of us have been talking about over the past 3 days and that any of us are using, but they do serve as really important entry points for visitors. They're hugely accessible to people, and it's oftentimes the first time that a visitor is going to engage with that museum or that exhibition. So how the website as being this first entry point into whatever exhibit or museum they have to really represent and convey their information in the best way possible. And this might be the only time that the visitor is maybe interacting with the museum. So what's on the website is hugely important in how visitors are interpreting and understanding the museum, its role in communities, and the art and history and culture that's being housed within this museum. And as we saw with the COVID-19 pandemic, lots of websites kind of had to re-emphasize their websites and make them more accessible and easier to use. COVID-19 museums were shut down, so the websites were really important to even conveying just important health protocols, but also just keeping people up to date and somehow interested and engaged in interacting with the artwork, right? We saw a huge influx of digital archives and digital exhibitions going on during COVID-19 because there was no other way for people to really interact with or engage with these museums. So the importance of museum websites is there, and oftentimes it's kind of maybe the least interesting thing we want to talk about because it's just a website, but they're hugely important, again, because they serve as these very early entry points for visitors to learn. So websites, important to investigate a little bit more about them. As a digital methods researcher, websites are great for scraping data. They're great for investigating. You can do a lot with websites, from archiving the website to, again, scraping the data and analyzing that further. And they really do serve as a great medium between the physical and other virtual and experience realities. And again, they're the first stop. So how these websites are really conveying their information, again, is really important to how visitors are really interpreting and taking away materials from the museum. So my three main research goals is first to explore the web pages, explore which web pages are out there on the Benin Bronze's Repatriation, to analyze the context on these websites, and to uncover more about traces of cultural colonialism, settler ignorance, and recognition, and again, parse out themes and patterns that emerge or just as equally as important don't emerge and are not included. So what's left out is also hugely important to how this whole repatriation initiative is or is not being framed. And that goes into obviously the settler ignorance of what's being excluded. So my methodological steps. So first is I compiled a list of all the websites that have noted that they'd be participating in the repatriation initiative. And I had a total of 33 museums, but out of that only 26 have web pages, so that kind of reduced the amount of lifting that had to be done. So it's 26 web pages are being focused on. And then I'm going to go through these a little bit more, but I'm going to extract just a text-only version of the web page to make analysis a bit more easier, and then also do a frequency generator to kind of see what words are more frequently being used and how often. And then from there will be a textual analysis and then kind of more explaining and uncovering my findings and whatever themes and patterns that emerge. So text size is, after compiling the list of 26 web pages, text size is going to be a huge step. So with text size, you can put in a URL and it'll just extract the just text only version. So no pictures, no other graphics. It's just the text, which makes analyzing it very simple because there's no other distractions with the website. And then from there, I'll be able to just export that and then read it, highlight it, and code it. From there, I'm also going to put in the websites into a tag cloud generator, and this will help me see the frequency of words being used. So like, what words are the museums most commonly using to describe the Benin Bronze's Repatriation Initiative? And then I'll be able to very clearly see what words are also not being used. So this is going to help me kind of better understand what themes, patterns, are they buying into acknowledgement and recognition, or are those types of words and themes not really emerging in their acknowledgement of the repatriation that's going to be going on, as well as any dates. I'll be looking out for dates about whether they are going to actually repatriate, like when that's going to start, or any dates and more historical background on the Benin bronzes as well, just to really understand how they're explaining this to the visitors again. And then a coding scheme that I've worked on developing. It's pretty straightforward, just parsing out text themes and keywords, looking for certain words that are going to either emerge or not emerge. And the frequency will really help me with this as well, seeing what words are more frequently being used or not. And then looking more about background and details on the Benin bronzes, and mention of the Repatriation Initiative and any other historical details that are either absent or definitely included. And just to wrap it up, some limitations that I saw. Of course, there's always tools and limitations and bugs related to any type of web scraping tool. There's always issues that are that emerge and are just important to be aware of. And then honestly, the amount of text on the websites, that might be a problem if there's just not a robust amount of information on these web pages for me to even parse through and analyze. And then each museum has different focus and different priorities. So the relationship between the museum and Benin City and the bronzes is very different per museum and per initiative. So that's also something to really keep in mind as I do this research and I'm thinking about how they're framing it and why they're framing it to the public. And then of course the cross-analysis across different web pages with keeping the differences between each region and museum in mind. And just to wrap up, again, I said I was working on this project in class. And I also wanted to do a textual analysis of different articles as well, which I think would pair nicely with how the web pages are being framed. Also looking at how news outlets and that focus on art and museums are also framing this, and kind of pair those together and do a cross analysis. And then again, maybe including interviews from anyone involved in the Repatriation Initiative from Nigeria. And Nigeria is in the process of creating one of the largest African art museums. So of course they want their artwork back because they need it for their museum. So I think including some of their perspective and experiences working on this Repatriation Initiative that's been going on for a very long time would be very rich for this research. And then looking at some of the paraphernalia and the objects inside the museums would also be really rich in trying to get a full rounded picture of how this initiative is being framed to the public on the website and the exhibitions, and from different parties involved. And that's all I have.